Representative John Lewis, a civil rights legend, he decided to endorse Hillary Clinton, no problem. But when asked, about Bernie Sanders' civil rights history, perhaps implying that, well, he's a civil rights activist too, why wouldn't you endorse him? This is what John Lewis had to say.
To be very frank, I don't want to cut you off, but I never saw him. I never met him. I would chair the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee for 3 years, from 1963 to 1966. I was involved in the sit-ins, the Freedom Ride, the March on Washington, the March from Selma to Montgomery, and directed the voter education project for 6 years. But I met Hillary Clinton. I met President Clinton.
Now, he allegedly misspoke and did not actually meet Bill and Hillary Clinton, and that's because they weren't there. Now, the point that John Lewis was trying to make is that, Bernie Sanders wasn't the civil rights activist that he says he was. I didn't see him, so maybe he wasn't even there. And the media has also tried to denigrate his record on LGBT rights. Even Barney Frank endorsed Hillary Clinton, and, he painted her as this pragmatist. Barney Frank is the first openly gay congressman. So it's no surprise that, these politicians are in favor of Hillary Clinton. She campaigned for them. She did fundraising for them. They like each other. That's fine. And even if you agree with Hillary Clinton more ideologically, you think that her foreign policy is good, even though you're a civil rights activist, and she wasn't, that's fine. Nobody can police African Americans and Latinos and say you have to vote for Bernie Sanders because he was a civil rights activist. He marched with Dr. King and whatnot. You can't do that. But I think that if civil rights is a really important issue to you, then you deserve to know the truth. You deserve to know that Bernie Sanders is better on civil rights than Hillary Clinton. That's indisputable. So we all know that Bernie Sanders had marched with Dr. Martin Luther King. He led a civil rights sit-in in the University of Chicago. Now, there's some pictures to actually prove this. Now, with respect to one photo, some are alleging that this is actually Bruce Rappaport, a colleague of Bernie Sanders. 2 individuals have confirmed this, apparently, but the photographer claims that this was actually Bernie Sanders after all. Danny Lyon, he states, I talked to Bernie Sanders and I took the picture of him, and I also took the other picture of him with shorter hair as well. And then he released more pictures kind of proving the point, but even if we don't have any photographic evidence, the point still stands that Bernie Sanders was a civil rights activist. But what I want to do is I want to talk about Hillary Clinton and where she was at this time. Because we know Bernie Sanders was an activist. He was fighting to desegregate the University of Chicago. But what was Hillary Clinton doing? So what I want to do is I want to tell you guys about someone named Barry Goldwater. He was a Republican presidential candidate. And this is what he had to say about the Civil Rights Act.
Senator Goldwater, we have another question here from some of our listeners. You voted against the Civil Rights Act in 1964. Would you do so today, and what is your position now on the proposed Voting Rights Act?
Well, to answer the first part of your question, if the same two items remained in the bill that caused me to think it unconstitutional at that time remained in any bill today, I would have to vote against it.
You have said, I believe, that we have no right to tell the southern states what they must do about school integration. I can't understand this statement. Do you mean to say the Supreme Court decision is null and void?
No, the Supreme Court decision is not necessarily the law of the land. The Constitution still is.
Now, in the same time period, Bernie Sanders was marching with Dr. Martin Luther King, and Hillary Clinton was campaigning for this guy. I'm not kidding. She campaigned for Barry Goldwater, a Republican who was not in favor of desegregation. But don't take my word for it. Take Hillary Clinton's word for it.
I was a Goldwater girl. I mean, really, we used to wear, little banners which said Goldwater girl.
Now, let's be 100% fair. Hillary Clinton came around. She ended up not voting for Barry Goldwater, and she did get on board with civil rights. I mean, she was in favor of it. She wasn't an activist, but she did come around to it. But here's the thing that bugs me about Hillary Clinton. She always has to play catch up with Bernie Sanders. I'm sick of the fact that, she's right now, so we can't critique her for that. No, we can critique her for it. Because how many issues does she have to be wrong on? How many times will she be wrong before she gets it right the first time? So, this is a trend that has persisted throughout her career. She's always been playing catch up with Bernie Sanders when it comes to the Iraq War, LGBT rights, the Keystone XL pipeline, the Trans-Pacific Partnership, and now minimum wage. She's in favor of a 12. Bernie's in favor of a 15. She doesn't want to legalize marijuana. She's in favor of a Syrian no-fly zone. How many issues will it take for her to realize, look, I'm wrong. Maybe I need to reassess my position on these? I mean, she did it when she was young. She was on the wrong side of history then. She finally came around. But I don't want a president who's going to have to make a snap decision and then get it wrong. See, if you're president of the United States, you have no right to be wrong. So what I mean by that is that if you make a decision and you're wrong the first time, well, you don't get to say, I'm sorry, now I'm on the right side. No, there's serious consequences for a president who makes the wrong decision, like going to war, like certain domestic policies. They have deleterious consequences. There are waves of consequences that continue even after your presidency. So you don't have a right to be wrong if you're president. You need to get it right the first time, and you've consistently shown throughout your career and now that you just cannot get it right the first time around. We have to drag you in the right direction. We have to drag you along. I mean, when it comes to gay rights, you were like one of the last people to come out in favor of marriage equality. Why is that? Why are we always having to drag Hillary Clinton's feet? Maybe she's not with us. Maybe that's not the case that, she cares about these issues. Maybe she just comes around when it's politically expedient. That's what she's always done. That's what she's doing now. You can denigrate Bernie Sanders' civil rights activism. That's fine. Let's pretend like he wasn't an activist. But don't try to lie and mislead people about the fact that Hillary Clinton was somehow better. Is that the implication? Because that's not true. Now, again, nobody's going to try to police African Americans and Latinos and say that they owe their vote to Bernie Sanders. That's wrong. That's bullshit. Because they don't. But if it comes down to this one issue of civil rights, and that's like the deciding factor, they've weighed out all the policies and they think that civil rights is how they're going to cast their vote. They deserve to know the truth. The bottom line is that when it comes down to Bernie Sanders versus Hillary Clinton on civil rights, Bernie Sanders was right the first time, and she was wrong.
Thanks for watching the Humanist Report. Don't forget to subscribe and check us out at humanistreport.com.